All right. Today we are folding a pattern named Dancing Streamers. It's got rhombus and triangle twists on the front and hexagon and triangle twists on the back. And we're going to be, or at least I'm going to be using a 40 division diagonal triangle grid on a hexagon. So diagonal means that the grid lines hit the edges perpendicularly. There's no grid line through the center that goes to the corner. And that's so that we can have nice rings around the center and not be folding little bits into the corners. So I'm going to start by showing the crease pattern really quick. And feel free to screenshot this. We've got that one hexagon position, one triangle position on the front, two triangle positions on the back. There's a left and a right-handed triangle there, and two rhombus positions on the front. There's the center of the squiggle and a little further out. This is, well, we can also see these positions in the tiling. So the tiling has the one hexagon position. You see the same things on all 6 sides of that hexagon. We've got the triangle right next to the hexagon. We've got the rhombus that resolves pleats from those triangles. So this is a hex, tri, rhomb, tri start. But then that rhombus is not in the position of symmetry. That next rhombus out connected to it is in the position of twofold rotational symmetry. And there's these 2 triangles that resolve the pleats from these 2 rhombi. So those are the positions that we're looking at, the theoretical background for what we'll be folding. Again, feel free to take a screenshot of the tiling. We're going to be folding mostly from what we can observe on the paper. So now back to the paper. I'm going to take a second to set things up, and we will start, and if you care which side is front, we will start on the back with a closed hexagon twist. And with this diagonal grid, it's harder to identify which grid lines go through the center unless you actually fold your paper in half. That is really good verification that those grid lines do in fact go through the center. And we're going to take all of these grid lines going into the center and make them mountain folds to start making a closed hexagon twist. Notice that as soon as I make a mountain fold, I also make a corresponding valley fold 1 grid space away. That helps hold the mountain fold in place. And I'm going to work my way around, keeping the paper touching the table so I can hold both that mountain and valley fold basically with 1 finger, or even the side of my hand. So I don't have to pinch each of the 12 folds that I'm making for this hexagon twist, because I don't know about you, but I do not have 24 fingers. So we've got this closed hexagon, and I actually have it in what I call the tower form. It's sitting elevated 2 spaces above the rest of the paper. I'll go ahead and zoom in here, and I'm going to give it a sharp twist around. So I'll tap the top to kind of make a little dimple, a little divot, and then grab it and give it a sharp twist, and then smooth out anything that got crumpled during the twisting. So the closed hexagon twist works really nicely if you move quickly. If you try to move slowly, it will fight you and it will crumple more. From here, we're going to flip over to the squiggle side, and I'm going to put in closed triangle twists. Really, we'll do the closed triangle and the closed rhombus, but we'll start with one triangle on one pleat, and that's going to go in at tube pleat spacing. So we've got a valley one space out from this folded mountain, and a mountain one space further out. And then where the new mountain intersects the existing mountain, I'll open up the pleat and put in a three-way intersection of mountain folds. This erases the extension of the pleat from the hexagon. And really for this tutorial, I'm assuming that you already know how to fold a closed hexagon, closed triangle, and closed rhombus twist. I'm just explaining a little bit more on these first ones, because this tutorial is more about the structure, more about recognizing the symmetry points, about seeing what does and does not belong in one ring around the center. And once we have that closed triangle set up, we can press just outside of the corners to squash. From here, I'll rotate and put in an equivalent triangle on the next pleat coming from the hexagon. So I've got my valley hitting one space from this folded mountain. I could also say one space out from the closed hexagon hole, and my mountain one space further. This time I have a pleat down below that I am folding through, and I'm going to open this top pleat to put in the third direction of pleat for my triangle twist and press to squash. So one of the benefits of working from the tiling is you know when you can go ahead and fold a pleat overlap into a rhombus twist. In this case, I am able to go ahead and fold that rhombus. I'm going to open the pleat overlap. I'm going to pop this pleat out from below. And in this case, the through line is coming from my most recent triangle. So I'm going to let that grid line continue through as a mountain the whole way to the edge of the paper. And this other grid direction will jump over. So we've got the valley, then the mountain, and then one more space, the mountain, and then the valley on the far side. And squash. And so far, this tutorial is indistinguishable from when I taught dancing ribbons. And yes, dancing streamers is a very related name intentionally. So I taught that in Advent of Tess 2022. So then continuing onwards, I'm going to repeat those two twists all the way around my central hexagon. This time though, I'm going to set up both of them at the same time. So I'm finding the valley fold, which tells me the spacing for my twists. I'm going to start setting up the triangle up above, but instead of fully setting it up as a triangle and running a pleat overlap, I'm going to let the triangle lay down flat. So I'm flipping this pleat that's going off to the right, and I'm going to go ahead and set up my rhombus. and squash. Once that rhombus is squashed, I'll restore the pleat from the triangle and squash that too. Then I can continue and repeat. I've got my valley fold, one space out from the folded mountain. I can also say one space out from the closed hexagon hole, where I will find the three-way intersection for my triangle and lay it down flat for a moment while I set up and squash my rhombus twist, and then restore the triangle and squash that too. And in case you're watching this live, I do not expect people to fold their version at the same speed that I'm folding this here. This is recorded for a reason. But I do want to get through this whole grid in, less than 2 hours. I want to be done well before my office hour with my Basic Twist Bootcamp students. So that's why I'm moving quickly. But there will be a pause button after I've gotten through the whole thing. So next up, I've got the same situation again. And we're going to set up the triangle and the rhombus. Squash the rhombus, then squash the triangle. And now I'm on to the 6th triangle around that hexagon, and I'm going to find that valley, find my mountain for the triangle, the three-way intersection, and I'm going to choose to let the upper intersection be a pleat overlap for now, and I can even flip that over to let the triangle lay down flat like we have been doing to make room for the next rhombus twist down below this triangle and squash. Then I can squash the new triangle. And now, if I'm paying attention, these mountain folds going out past the overlap, those will be precisely the mountain folds that I need once I pop the overlap open. See how those are the same mountain folds to fold the rhombus twist. I just put the valleys on the opposite side of the mountains. And so that would be the benefit of working the opposite direction around. You have these long mountain folds that are exactly what you need. And I mean, for this ring around the center, it really doesn't matter which way around you go. We'll probably see by the end it mattering a little bit, but since this pattern is pretty aligned with the diagonal grid, then it won't matter as much. So next up, I'm going to take a pair of parallel pleats and I'm going to put the rhombus to rhombus connection in place. So this is going to have a valley fold coming right to the corner of our rhombus twist, we are going to keep this mountain coming from the pointy corner of the rhombus as the through line of the new rhombus. We're going to have our mountain parallel to this valley as part of the as one of the two diagonal plates. And we can go ahead and set all of that up. This is actually causing pleat overlaps in two different sets of parallel pleats, which is something I typically say not to do, but here we are. And press to squash. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and resolve the overlap here first, and that is going to have two closed triangle twists on the back that are close together. So flipping over, this is the overlap I was interested in resolving, and I'm going to have, so when I open this up, what I'm looking for is a I-beam structure. So the mountain folds are making this I shape, capital I, the bars on top, with two grid spaces between these three-way intersections. And I can fold those both in towards the center and then flip one pleat at a time. Press to squash, press to squash, and that has resolved my pleat overlap over here, resolved it entirely. Next up, I have an overlap here, which will also be resolved with two triangle twists. And it's going to look a little bit different. So I'm opening this up. And the key thing to remember for this pattern is that there's always two grid spaces between things, unless they're on the same side. So whenever there's a choice of spacing, it is always tube pleat spacing in this pattern. So this time I'm opening up that I-beam and I want 1, 2, 3 patterns. I want this middle mountain to be 2 spaces from the next parallel mountain. And since there's 3 spaces between them, I can go ahead and set up and squash both of them at the same time because I have somewhere to press to squash in between. So some of our triangles here are connected tip to tip, and some of them are connected with 1 space in between. That actually describes the whole loop of 6 triangle twists. You alternate between extra space, no space. So the next one has no space. My valley fold will come right to the corner of the existing triangle. And notice here, I have this pleat down below. My new mountain is coming in. I'm not doing an overlap. Instead, I'm opening up and putting in a triangle wrap. Not because a triangle goes on the other side, but because the next twist is on the other side, and we will use those pleats to help set it up. And then I've got my new triangle, and I can go ahead and squash. So now, when I put in my next closed rhombus on the other side, I already have this pair of triangles that I overlapped with going backwards in the pleat layer, like in my sets of parallel pleats earlier. So I'm going to be able to move forward more smoothly now that I've gotten my initial setup. So I'll make sure I'm grabbing that triangle wrap, flipping over. I see that triangle wrap here, and it's going to become a closed rhombus with its central diamond sitting right in the corner of the three-way intersection. And I can go ahead and set up. Notice I'm erasing this pleat going up to the upper right as I add in the second diagonal pleat of the rhombus, which goes up to the top, and press to squash. And you'll also notice that I'm not doing the entire squiggle. I'm just adding one more layer, the next rhombus. And then in the next ring around, I'll add the next rhombus after that. At least, yeah, that does fit in the layer. I had to double check because there was a possibility that it would be beyond a single layer. So now I will follow my overlaps over to the other side, where I will put in 2 closed triangle twists with centers 3 spaces apart. And my cue there is the tube pleat spacing. So if I have the tube pleat spacing, then my centers will be 3 spaces apart, and vice versa. And now I need another triangle that is centered 1 space out from the corner of our existing triangle, and I'll do a triangle wrap to facilitate that. And by the way, if you have any questions about why I'm folding in certain ways, feel free to put that in the chat, or if you're watching the recording, in the comments. I'll do my best to get you an answer. So from here, we're repeating steps. We're flipping over, turning that triangle wrap into a rhombus twist. And I'm going to go ahead and move faster as we repeat these steps. So it's rhombus, flip over, the 2 triangles with 1 space between them, and 1 triangle with no space, no extra space, and a triangle wrap to resolve. And flipping over, I'll turn that triangle wrap into a closed rhombus twist. And flipping back, we'll cycle to those 2 triangles with a space between them. And the triangle with no extra space, and a triangle wrap. And flipping over, I'll repeat with another rhombus twist. We're getting around close to all the way around the center. And flipping over. Those two triangles with a space between them. I'm noticing already that I have extra pleat overlaps that I did not have in the previous sets of parallel pleats. But I'm going to do exactly the same things I've been doing, just ignoring that extra pleat that we have there. So I'm still doing the triangle and triangle wrap. And then this is the part that is slightly different. When I put in my new rhombus, instead of just running that pleat off and having an overlap, I'm going to make a triangle wrap. And flip, and now instead of needing to fold two triangles, I already have the second one, so I'll just fold the one. Perfect. So now we've finished this next ring around the center. We have some of our symmetry points for the final pattern. These rhombus twists that we just put in are the positions of two-fold rotational symmetry for the broader pattern. And what I'm going to do is, because we may as well continue from where we left off with that triangle twist. And this triangle is part of a loop of 6 triangles where you alternate no space, space. So the next one has no space. And this loop of triangles is the third symmetry position in the pattern. So the hexagon has 6 of the same around it. The rhombus, the middle rhombus of the set of 3 has the same on opposite sides, and this position has 3 of the same around it. Then at this pleat overlap, we need to finish the groups of triangles. So I'll open that up, and one thing that I notice right away is that I have a pleat overlap down here, and it's going to a twist on the opposite side. It's going to a rhombus twist, but I don't really need to know that to recognize that this valley fold is hitting the existing mountain fold at 60 degrees. And that is my signal to do a compound wrap. The next twist is on the opposite side. This pleat is hitting this pleat at 60 degrees. That needs to be a compound wrap where we're doing this zigzag of pleats. And if you're not familiar with the compound wrap, I have a whole video on basic wraps, both the triangle wrap and compound wrap, that you can check out. And from here, the easiest way to squash these 2 triangles is if I lay this one flat, it's going to try and tuck under the other one. The easiest way is actually to fold this pleat over, folding through the existing triangle, which happens to be on an existing grid line inside that triangle. so you're not adding any new creases. And then you can get all of those triangles into place. Flipping over, I'm going to take that compound wrap and pop out the center that was sunken down, and now all of those mountain folds are exactly the mountain folds that I need for my closed rhombus twist. And then I've now worked my way across this direction of parallel pleats. It's time to move on to the next. This pleat is going to do the same thing as this pleat over here. Or I could look at the squiggle on the opposite side and say this rhombus is the same as that rhombus. So the reason I'm able to say that is because this middle rhombus is the position of symmetry. Whatever happens to this one is exactly what happens to this one, just seen in the opposite orientation. Or I can say, okay, whatever happens around here is exactly the same. And therefore, these two are exactly the same as these two. And so off of this pleat goes a triangle on this side of the paper. And what spacing? Why, tube pleat spacing. Whenever there's a choice of spacing, it's tube pleat spacing in this pattern. So I'm starting this set of parallel pleats with a closed triangle twist on this side of the paper. And that is going to lead into, so notice here it leads into another rhombus twist. But am I ready to fold that entire rhombus twist? The answer is actually no, and I'm going to show on the tiling why. So our first ring around the center, we folded these tiles. We got a nice hexagon boundary in the tiling. Our second ring around the center, we folded these tiles, and we also got a nice hexagonal boundary. You can see cutting through these groups of 6 triangles. But in the next ring around the center, we're starting with finishing the groups of 6, adding in the third rhombus in the squiggle, adding in this triangle that's next to the hexagon, and that rhombus is sticking out past the boundary that we're working on. So that rhombus is not going to be fully folded. So coming back here, what I'm going to do about it is set up the rhombus as a 3-way intersection. I'm going to say, okay, the amount that fits inside of that boundary I'm working on is a triangle. So I'm going to treat it as a triangle. I know there's a pleat heading off this way in that rhombus. This valley is hitting this mountain at 120 degrees. It's always the angle from the sides that are coming from the twists, not this side out here, which would be 60 degrees. It's always the side coming from the twist, 120 degrees. So I'm going to really pop that open and put in a triangle wrap. And then instead of setting up the rest of the rhombus, I'm going to leave it as a 3-way intersection and lay it down flat. Notice if I had set up the whole rhombus, then there would be 2 pleats crossing these other parallel pleats, which is the red flag. We are doing one layer at a time. There should only be one pleat crossing a set of parallel pleats at a time. Then flipping over, we can use that triangle wrap to make a new triangle twist. And then continuing on down, we'll open up these layers. The next triangles, like these, we're going to have three pairs of two triangles that are close together. So these two need to be close together, 2 spaces between their centers. And on this pleat down below, we're going to put in a compound wrap. Because this pleat hits this pleat, I should say hits from the direction they're coming from at 60 degrees. And again, we can fold through that previous triangle to get our new triangles squashed. And flipping over, we can turn that compound wrap into a whole rhombus twist. Whenever we have a compound wrap, we can always turn that into a whole rhombus twist, because the compound wrap takes up the same amount of space in the tiling as the rhombus. And then we will repeat those steps. And I'll actually take a second to get a cough drop as well. So the next triangle is on the same side of the paper, just like we saw down here. And we're going to use tube pleat spacing. If you don't know what I mean by tube pleat, the mountain folds exactly meet and form a tube. And you can see we have 1, 2, 3 pleat overlaps because there are 3 other pleats in that direction. And instead of folding the full rhombus here, we are going to put in a triangle wrap. Well, we would put in the triangle wrap regardless, but we're setting up the rhombus, which would be here, as a 3-way intersection, because that would be sending another pleat through our set of parallel pleats. And then flipping over, we can finish this loop of 6 triangles. We can also see if there's a way to make that triangle wrap a little cleaner. I think it might just be an inaccuracy in my grid, which, yes, does happen sometimes, especially with 40 divisions. And then I'm doing a compound wrap under the lower triangle twist and flipping that pleat up to make the squashing process easier. And then flipping over, I'll turn that compound wrap into a rhombus twist. So the reason why I'm working with 40 grid divisions is so we can see those repeats of the center that we would not be seeing otherwise. Like on 32 divisions, we're not seeing much of repeats of the center on this. And then I'll repeat those same steps again. Closed triangle at tube pleat spacing from the rhombus that I just put in, and then starting to set up the next rhombus, but leaving it as a three-way intersection with a triangle wrap over the next pleat. And flipping over, I'll turn that into a triangle twist. Oop. And open up the next overlap to fold the remaining 2 triangles of the loop of 6 triangles, and the next overlap I will turn into a compound wrap. Flipping the pleat through one of the previous triangles to make it easier to squash. And flipping the paper, I can finish the compound wrap into a rhombus twist and continue zooming on along. I'm a little more than halfway around at this point. So triangle at tube pleat spacing, then three-way intersection, that's a placeholder for a rhombus with a triangle wrap. Turn that wrap into a closed triangle twist on the back. Then finish the loop of 6 triangles. And put in a compound wrap down below. Squash the triangles. Then flip over and turn that compound wrap into a rhombus twist. And then repeat the cycle with a tube pleat spacing to a closed triangle twist. I'm noticing now I have extra pleats that I'm overlapping because I'm coming around to the end of this ring around the center. I'm working my pleat that's overlapping up the set of parallel pleats, resolving twists as I go. And going on and on. Excuse me. And rhombus twist from the compound wrap. And here I already have this loop of 6 triangles resolved. So what I need is my triangle twist at tube pleat spacing and that three-way intersection for the next rhombus, which is very close. I'm just going to let it float a little until it can sit on top of the squashed triangle. Okay. From here, we've got almost our full squiggle. It needs another triangle on the end, but we've got all the rhombus twists of the squiggle. And we're going to start adding in the squiggles along here. They're not going to fully appear in one layer around the center. And neither are the hexagons. We've actually got 2 layers around the center to go. But I've got this 3-way intersection to start with that I know needs to be a rhombus twist. And I'll run that overlap through everything. And then the next overlap, I can actually get a full rhombus twist. So I'm going to open that up. And the key thing I'm paying attention to here is how many pleats are going through the rest of the parallel pleats. If it's just one, I'm good to go. And squash. Now for the next rhombus twist, if I was to go ahead and do the whole thing, then I would end up with a pleat back through a pleat from a twist I just made, which is a big no-no. So instead of doing the full rhombus here, I'm going to do a 3-way intersection, centered 1 space out from the corner of the previous rhombus, and where that 3-way intersection hits up above, that will be the triangle finishing my squiggle from the center. So I'm leaving this as a 3-way intersection for right now. And then this overlap is going to, so from triangles on this side, it's going to the hexagon on the back, copy of the center. I'm going to flip the paper over and open up and find what it would take to have borders of that hexagon given just the 2 pleats that are coming in. So this is going to end up being an I-beam with 1 space between the 3-way intersections, and then it can lay down flat. Then we're going to add a 3rd 3-way intersection on this point, which now we've transitioned and are working on the next set of parallel pleats. And this is the first parallel pleat, so it needs something to happen on it. And we're going to make a structure that I call the half hexagon tube. So this ends up being half 3 of the pleats that go into a hexagon, and it makes a tube running out to the edge. And then we see an overlap here. So I'm going to flip over, and at that overlap, I need to finish the rhombus twist that was set up as a 3-way intersection. So I'm finishing that rhombus twist, and I also need to fold this triangle on the pleat feeding into the hexagon. So I can squash both of those. And then my next overlap, we saw in the last set of parallel pleats, that that is going to be a whole rhombus. And then the next thing is a three-way intersection that's a placeholder for the third rhombus of the squiggle that then feeds down into a triangle twist on this side. Which feeds into the hexagon. So I'll flip over, open up the overlap to get that hexagon started. And then while I'm there, I can go ahead and put in the third pleat for this hexagon that kicks off the overlaps with the next set of parallel pleats. So then I'm just laying that hexagon down flat once, or at least once in this ring around the center. Flipping over, I'll open my overlap and turn it into a rhombus twist from that three-way intersection plus a triangle. And you'll notice this triangle has a pleat going out in the same direction as the set of parallel pleats that I'm working on. That is a good sign. And then my next overlap yields a whole rhombus. And my next overlap yields a three-way intersection as a placeholder for a rhombus and a triangle. You'll notice that each intersection yields some form of a rhombus or two triangles. And a rhombus is made of two triangles. So this is very much a property of the tiling and the space that you have there. Then you have the overlap that goes to the hexagon, which we will flip over to work on. And add the third pleat of that hexagon, leaving it as a tube. This time I didn't even bother sending that pleat all the way to the edge. I just got enough to get this area flat, and then I'll flip over and immediately open that plate to resolve the next overlap with a rhombus and a triangle. And then again, the next overlap is a rhombus. And I'm going to start moving even faster. And then a three-way intersection placeholder for a rhombus and a triangle. And we're on to the next set of parallel pleats with the half hexagon tube on the back. And flip. And I ran the pleat from the hexagon even less this time, less distance, because I'm immediately opening that up on the other side to get my new triangle and rhombus. And then another rhombus. and the three-way intersection plus triangle that finishes a squiggle. And then hexagon on the other side. And flip. And rhombus and triangle. So how do I get a rhombus and a triangle out of this overlap? Well, the rhombus was already half set up. It was the three-way intersection. So I'm just adding a triangle to it. Then I have the second triangle's worth for the triangle. This rhombus, I get the whole rhombus in one go. The next intersection, I set up a three-way intersection as a rhombus placeholder and add the next triangle that finishes a squiggle. And then now that I've worked all my way around, when I'm putting in the third plate of that hexagon, I'm going to do a triangle wrap, because a triangle on the other side is what comes next. And flipping over, I can squash that triangle twist. Okay, so one last ring around the center. We will finish these squiggles. And I'm going to start down here. Well, it really doesn't matter which side I start from. I could equivalently work from the hexagon and work down. The rhombus off of this triangle is not going to fit all the way in this ring around the center, pretty sure. But we shall see. Yeah, I think the easiest way to do this is to start with the hexagon, finish the hexagon completely, and work my way down from there. So this will be working the opposite way around the center, but again, because our pattern is so aligned with the diagonal grid, it doesn't make much difference. So I'm going to flip over and start with this hexagon, just because it's a much easier landmark to use. And I already had 3 pleats going into the hexagon, so I get to go ahead and just finish that whole hexagon. And then flip over, and now I've got this overlap between the pleat from the hexagon and a pleat from the three-way intersection that's placeholding a rhombus. So I will set up a triangle, because we need triangles next to the hexagon, and that rhombus. And I can lay the triangle down flat while I squash the rhombus, then bring it back up. And then I've got this overlap between 2 rhombi. I'll flip over, open her up, find the mountain fold that's at tube pleat spacing, so 2 spaces between this mountain down below and this mountain up in here, which tells me that I have an extra space between those triangles. which then tells me that my next triangle here, which is also going into an overlap, is right snuggled up in, and this angle between these pleats tells me I need a triangle wrap. Okay. Flipping over, that is coming from a rhombus twist, and by folding that rhombus, I'm kicking off the next set of pleat overlaps. So I do actually get that whole rhombus, but it would have been annoying to start it from this side. And then I have choices of how to resolve this overlap. I'm going to choose to set up the triangle on this side. So let me draw that out. I'm going to have a valley fold, one space from where the mountain fold will land. Important landmark there. And I'm going to have these mountain folds defining the center of my triangle. And I'm going to go ahead and do a triangle wrap into the half hexagon tube. This is more of an insight of how I would fold it personally. In the next corner, I'll do it slightly differently. And press to squash that triangle. Then flip. And now I've got a teardrop where I need a hexagon. So open that overlap and put in the rest of my hexagon twist, making sure to rotate it all the way around. And then my next twists are on the other side, where I have the triangle and the rhombus that I saw in the previous ring around the center. I'm laying that triangle down flat while I squash the rhombus and then bringing it back up. So here's where you can see why I chose 40 divisions diagonal grid, because it fits these squiggles with these outer squiggles and very little else. And it gets a perfect border at the end. So this is a little bit of let's make it nice and also learn the pattern. So from here we have a pleat overlap that requires triangle twists on the back. These are the triangles with an extra space between them. I'm also looking for the tube pleat spacing. And then my next triangle is snuggled up close in there. And squash. And I made the triangle wrap to accommodate that pleat, because flipping over, my next twist is a rhombus on this side. So I'd said in the previous corner when I did that last hexagon that I'd show you an alternative way. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead, flip over, and fold the hexagon. And when I fold that hexagon, I'm going to do a triangle wrap in there. So you can either fold the triangle and do a triangle wrap into the half hexagon tube, or you can fold the hexagon and fold a triangle wrap behind it. Either one works. Just make sure to rotate your hexagon all the way around. And then it's off to the races. This overlap, I've got that three-way intersection. That's a placeholder for a rhombus already set up. So that becomes a rhombus, and that requires a triangle on the pleat from the hexagon. And then the overlap from two rhombi means we flip over, we open up, we find the tube pleat spacing to find our two triangle twists. And then our third triangle in here leads into a triangle wrap. And flip, and that turns into a rhombus. And then while I'm here, I'm going to choose to do the triangle with a triangle wrap into the half hexagon tube, because I'm used to doing that. But if it's easier for you to do the hexagon first with the triangle wrap below it, more power to you. But I'll say for the third time, do rotate your hexagon all the way around. It helps keep the hole nice and tight. And rhombus and triangle. And the spacing on that is determined by the fact that this rhombus was already half set up as a three-way intersection. And flip. And two triangles, an extra space apart. And another triangle with a triangle wrap. So you'll notice again in this ring around the center, everything that we're doing, pretty much everything with the exception of being right in the corner, is adding a rhombus worth of twists, whether that's a rhombus or a triangle and triangle wrap, like I'm doing right now, or resolving two pleats into two sides of a hexagon. That is also a rhombus worth of space. Or triangle and second half of a rhombus. So rhombus worth of space. Then two triangles, also a rhombus worth of space. And then triangle and triangle wrap, also a rhombus worth of space. Probably the only exception we have to that rule is when I fold this rhombus, I'm only adding a triangle's worth. But it's kicking off the entire next set of pleat overlaps. So it's out at the corner, peeking around to the other side. And I'm on that last ring around the center, or sorry, last set of, it is the last ring around the center because I am running out of grid. But I am on the last set of parallel pleats of the last ring around the center. Even better. We're almost at the point where we get to see the whole thing. And squash. And flip and triangles. Getting very close, very exciting. And another triangle, densely spaced. Here, this hexagon is already folded, so I have another pleat already going through that space. That is fine. And flip. We're going to turn this into a rhombus. That rhombus is going to immediately connect to the next triangle. There's enough space between them. I don't need to fold anything over to squash. And there is Dancing Streamers. So that is what's going on for today's pattern. You had a taste of how I go around and find those layers around the center, those rings around the center. Here we can see the backlighting. At least we see the amount that my phone is able to provide given the fact that I'm sitting in front of a window. But I encourage you to fold this for yourself and then send me photos of your version and how you would backlight it. And we can see the backside backlit as well. This is one of those rare patterns that I'm kind of undecided whether I like it with or without backlighting better. So happy folding, everybody. Next week, I'm going to be folding another pattern in the same tiling, but with more repeats. So we'll see if you can use the lessons that you've learned in today's tutorial to fill in different twists for the hexagon, the triangle, the rhombus, the second rhombus, the second and third triangle positions, to fold that pattern as well. And actually, I'm going to take a look at it real quick. I think, yeah, it mostly uses closed twists as well. There are open hexagon and triangle twists involved, though. So that will be another interesting pattern from the same arrangement of shapes. And I hope you join me for that one too. Happy folding, everyone, and I will see you next week.